5 public marinas have a live camera feed, as Richard mentioned, kind of for both the public's use and also for our own, and for the marinas, kind of it could double as, tracking security and so forth. The cameras would be set up in such a way that only one location needs internet, and then the rest they feed all into one collection unit that's located likely at the American Fork Boat Harbor, where there's already internet available. The cost of this is something that we would be seeking grant dollars for through the Motorboat Access Grant. We've spoken with them. It's something that they are very supportive of, and that deadline is in October. So at this point, we're just making sure that each of the marinas are on board with having these set up. The additional benefit is that we would plan to have marina traffic counters at each of the locations, so that we would get a much better idea of visitation on the lake, at least through our public marinas. So those are the benefits as far as the ownership and involvement from each of our participating marinas. There would be a small power bill, and by small, truly small, somewhere in the $10 to $100 a year that would just tack onto your. It would likely be attached to one of your light poles and just tied into the power there. Otherwise, maybe an occasional, once a year, have somebody get up there and wipe off the glass so that it's not covered in spider webs or something like that. But very minimal. The IT side of it would be managed through the app developer that we would partner with to tie those and create the app for the public to use.
So can I just ask Eric, or maybe Richard too, so what is the ask for the county? Since I'm hearing some maintenance being handled by the app developer and the cost being handled potentially grant funded.
So for the county,
really the only ask.
Go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead, Richard. Oh, I was just going to say that the only ask is, a little bit of electrical. The marina would pay for the electrical increase, which is just a video camera, or maybe 3. I think there are 3 proposed for Lincoln Beach, and then the occasional maintenance. Have somebody climb up there and wipe off the cameras to make sure that they're shooting a clear picture.
And then maybe just to add to that, it would just be, the ask for the county would be just for Lincoln Beach. It affects other marinas around the lake. Lincoln Beach is the only one that's a county-owned facility, so to be able to put their cameras up on our facility. So.
Oh, got it. So at the same time, you'll be doing this for all of the other.
Correct.
marinas,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I just wonder, is this, when you say a live video, is this a live video feed for public to look at as well, or is this totally private in the sense of it's being used by who and what entity?
This is for public to use. But because they're public marinas, there's no expectation of privacy from a legal standpoint.
Okay. So it's a fixed camera, though. It only has one shot. You can't be moved around.
Not
this
by
one
the
couldn't be moved around. There's 3 different angles, so 3 different cameras would be shooting the various, one of the parking lot, one of the marina, one kind of out to the lake.
Yeah.
It would be similar to what you see on the UDOT traffic cameras.
Okay.
Same type of a setup.
And then we would probably, if the camera goes down into the future, seek grant funding again for replacement. It wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't necessarily be tied to the county as county property.
Correct.
Okay. I appreciate that overview. I don't have additional questions. I think that makes sense to put on the agenda.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, we'll turn to our third item, which is the annual report from USU Extension and 4-H.
My name's Ton Bettis. I'm from Utah State University Extension in Utah County. There is a copy of the slides in the manila folder that is there if you wish. So
Is this the same as the one you sent to us electronically?
you got the main update in there, but there's several additional documents in there.
Okay.
So I did not send an electronic copy of the presentation.
Okay.
So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And thank you for your service. Commissioner Ainge, thank you. I read in the news that you've recently been recruited, so to speak, for service to the military, and thank you for that.
Oh, thanks.
So, to get started, according to the cooperative agreement, Section 5, Portion C, we owe not owe, but we are to do an annual report kickoff on what we're doing, what our goals are, and then to communicate with the commissioners on how we could better help the county and better help residents. And this is in response to that. So part of that is that we are to discuss the previous year's budget, and this is an overview of what was allocated in 2019, a total of around just over $500,000, and these are the categories where the money was allocated. And of this extension, even though it was allocated to this, it was usually went right back to things like lease or county-owned vehicles, and so we actually never saw the money. And so of this budget, we would have about $30,000 to $40,000 at our discretion to use for educational events and professional improvement and research. So I also wanted to add on to this, just as an addendum, that the commission allocated $40,000 from that 2019 budget for moving expenses up to the Central Utah Water Conservancy District. We use that for, and here's some dollar amounts on what that money was used for. So the movers, telephones, internet, infrastructure, plus just internet in general. And then to build out, part of that was office furniture and dividers and things of that nature. So the question, pardon me, and this, I also told you I'd give you an update on what we spent to date on the $390,000 that was allocated for 2020, and here are those numbers of what we spent to date. So what I want to really get into on this is what we're doing with money provided to us by the county, which is ultimately taxpayer money. And so I'll spend the next few minutes covering that. So as far as the 4-H goes, 4-H obviously does youth programming, and they're traditionally known for agriculture, education, but they delve into a lot of other areas that are not as widely known for: STEM education, family and consumer science. And so even though 4-H is widely known for kids raising farm animals and rabbits and the fairs and things, there's a lot more to it than that. So this is just a distribution of 4-H clubs in 2019 across the county, and there was an average of 17 youth with 4 adult volunteers per club, and 2,260 club members. Now, of that, there are also many youth that participate in 4-H that are not particularly club members. In 2019, we still were doing a lot of after-school programming, just individual youth enrolled, and then summer camps. So impacts. These 4-H youth and the 4-H programming, even though they're offering ag education or family and consumer science education, the ultimate goal of these is to allow the youth to become stronger individuals contributing to society, and especially when we're working with youth from underserved communities or at risk, then our goal is to help them become just basically contributing members of society, and trying to help them, if they're veering toward getting into trouble, somehow keep them out of it. And so youth are 4 times more likely to give back to the community that have been in 4-H. They're 2 times more likely to be civically minded or active, 4 times less likely to become pregnant out of wedlock, 2 times more likely to attend college, more likely, especially in females, to pursue STEM education, 40% less likely to become involved in risky behavior. So delinquency prevention is something that I think we can talk about here. in that, especially if we're handling or working with youth that might just have a challenging situation at home, or for whatever reason might just be having challenges at schools, one of our programs is geared to work with 15 kids. And that's, so why are you spending money on 15 kids? Well, if you're working with somebody that is troubled somehow, that might be heading down the wrong road, a lot of time they require a lot of individual attention. But with that spending, the goal is to help them redirect into a more positive track. And so for every dollar spent on youth that are especially at risk, the county or government entities can save $5 to $15 in costs in the future, and that might involve rehabilitation through drug programs or incarceration and rehabilitation there. And so, that money spent right now isn't maybe as obvious. There is national research out there showing that there are these impacts made if you can intervene soon enough. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing this,
On that
Commissioner.
previous slide,
Yes.
these are incredible outcomes, and I think it speaks to the value of the programs. Where is this data pulled from?
The data is pulled from national studies. The reason, last year we had conversations, and they were justified conversations about local data. And I've had a lot of conversations, Commissioner, about that because I think it does need to be addressed. And to pull this kind of data takes years. And so they have to follow a youth from the time they start 4-H until they graduate from high school or even into college. And this sort of data right here can take 10 to 12 years to obtain. And so this was from Rutgers University, I believe, and it is from 4-H, national 4-H data.
Got it. So on a national basis,
Yes.
this is what 4-H is doing. But
Correct.
we don't have any data that kind of shows.
Not yet, unless
county
Melanie,
specific.
do you? Okay, Melanie Ogun, he'll introduce herself. Ogun will introduce herself in a few minutes, but she's our primary 4-H coordinator in the county. Okay. All right. So my background is agriculture and horticulture, and so I'm going to spend some time giving some examples of what Extension is doing in the county here. And so orchards, we have just over 6,000 acres of orchards. And the orchard industry, and the latest statistics I could find were a few years old, but the Utah Department of Agriculture and the Federal Department of Agriculture figure our orchards in Utah County are worth about $28 million to the local economy. And so, just for example, we're the second largest producer of tart cherries in the nation, and in a good year, we can get 55 million pounds of tart cherries harvested. I don't have this year's numbers yet. Apples and peaches are also major crops on the orchards, along with more farm stand type stuff to where we've got apricots, plums, pears, but those three species are bread and butter crops. So one thing, that $30,000 to $40,000 that we're using, travel, mileage reimbursement, office staff, computers, things of that nature, Utah State University Extension, if you look at salaries, travel, and the value if you had to hire private industry, is at least in just consultation and research contributing about $500,000, helping our growers with things like pest monitoring, disease monitoring, weather monitoring. We'll talk a little bit more of that in a bit. Agricultural education events, this is a conservative number again, but with pesticide license training so we can help our growers, lawn applicators get the CEUs they need to maintain their licenses. Dean and I will do about $58,000 in training for them. Individual farm site visit, $6,000. That's just what our costs might be, and I'll talk more about that later. And then residential pest diagnostics, that's just a cost to us. And that's actually, most of that money is not coming out of county budgets, but that's just what it cost us to help local county residents with what's wrong with my apple tree questions in my yard.
So
Go ahead,
maybe
Commissioner.
you'll get there, and I see those costs, but you're probably going to get to where the advantage is for the county.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Thank you. So pesticide application on an orchard can cost anywhere from $15,000 to $2,000 annually per acre. And so USU monitoring helps our growers target exactly when they need to spray and actually reduces the number of applications annually they have to make. Some other advantages to this is an actual just overall reduction in pesticide use. Many of our larger orchards are actually to use something called pheromone trapping, to where they will put out, scientists have found the pheromone that the insects use to attract a mate. And so in essence, we will use monitoring to find out when something like peach twig borer is at its peak in those orchards, and we'll flood the orchards with female pheromone. And so the insect guys are all out there getting ready for a date on Friday night with the honeys, and there's so much pheromone out in that orchard they can't find a female. And it keeps, without a pesticide application, if this is done well, it keeps the peach twig borer out of the peaches and out of the trees. We can do the same with greater peach tree borer, which goes after the trunks with that pheromone. We can do that with codling moth. Now, the reason we don't recommend this for homeowners is because you have to have about a 5 to 10 acre orchard before this kind of lure and this kind of management becomes effective. But most all of this is as a result of USU research and USU education in our agriculture industry.
On my peach tree, I just use my fingers.
Yeah, if you keep an eye on them. So some other things we have going on, our soils here are different than anywhere else in the nation. We have alkaline soil. So if you look at a pH scale on a level of 0 to 14, 7 is neutral, lower than 7 is acidic, above 7 is alkaline. Alkaline soil inhibits uptake of several micronutrients. And if you drive around your neighborhood and see yellow trees and yellow bushes, sometimes that's intended through genetics, but a lot of times it's nutrient deficiencies. And so this rootstock trialing that we've been participating in for years is actually international in scale, but locally what it's producing is rootstocks more adapted to our alkaline and clay soils. What this does is it helps the orchardist manage and reduces applications of fertilizers that they might have to make because of our soils and the not completely adapted rootstocks. Okay, farm visits. This is a major thing that Dean and I participate in. And this is just commercial farms. Some of them are a little smaller. I actually veer away from homeowner visits unless it's an emergency or a shut-in, because it would just overwhelm what I'm doing. But we do farm visits and commercial visits because if we can talk to a farmer or a lawn mowing company owner, they potentially impact hundreds of people, and it's worth our time to do. And so I didn't bring up particular business names, but Dean Miner has been working with a new grower up on the Provo bench that wants to start a small 3 or 4 acre farm growing fruit and vegetables. And with Dean working with them, he's got them a management plan that'll help them be able to harvest produce a year earlier with a profit of $15,000 to $20,000. Multiple visits to the county jail. I work with the programming deputies and help them manage their vegetable farm down there. They've got 2 or 3 acres, at least maybe 4, of vegetables. The county jail is located in an area that the irrigation water and soil is slightly salty, and it's just salty enough that it always creates challenges. And just last week, I was able to work with them. We did soil testing and we did water testing, and we formulated an irrigation plan that's actually salvaging their plants and halting a lot of death. Because salt builds up in the soils during late summer when we're super hot, and if you don't flush it through, then it will make the plants that causes chemical drought and causes them to desiccate. Another one just in the last month, pick your U-pick operation on West Mountain, ordered several trees in, probably closer to the low hundreds of cherries that he was wanting to plant so he could do a pick your own operation. They all came in. We were able to diagnose that they had a disease in them, Pseudomonas canker, and they were all particular to this particular vendor, and so he's working with that vendor to get a refund. Just a couple other examples. Alfalfa grower in Spanish Fork had seen a new pest that we helped with, and were able to help him salvage his first crop. Assisting with crop crop diversification with another grower in Genola. We're still working with them, and what we'll be able to do will still be to be determined. One thing I will bring up is we're working with them on some what's called fertigation and chemigation, to where if they need to put down fertilizer or an insecticide, a lot of times you can do it through your irrigation system and save having to use your equipment and labor to go do a separate application. And we're currently working with them on that to look at the practicalities of it. And then school districts will occasionally call. I've had several calls from football coaches saying my field's in bad shape, they're usually overused, and we've been able to develop programs for them to save money on fertilizer costs and increase soil management so that their fields will stay healthier. So these are just some of the things that Dean and I work with in agriculture and horticulture. Okay, general public. Now, we've had conversations in the past about being more efficient with the general public and how our education works, because a lot of people want one-on-one attention, but as far as taxpayer money and our time and what we can do and the impacts we can have, we are very grateful and always willing to help anybody that comes into our office, but we're making efforts to make our help more efficient. And so just in horticulture, so this is yard and garden calls. In 2019, we had over 1,000 office visits from county residents, bringing in samples or coming in and asking questions about why their garden's not doing well, why their tomatoes are struggling, why their grass is struggling. We had over 2,400 emails and 3,300 phone calls. And so this is our staff assistants. I have a horticulture assistant that is not paid through county money that does a lot of these diagnostics. I do a lot of them. But this is the scale of phone calls we're getting, not only here, but in food preservation. We get calls all the time with people saying, well, I want to can tomatoes, but I don't know how to do it safely, or how long, or what elevation. So these are the kinds of calls and the number of calls we're getting. So some things we're doing to try to become more efficient with public education is moving more online and more toward digital delivery. The millennials, the Gen Zers, and even younger Gen X residents are less likely to come into our office for help. They grew up with computers and grew up with the internet, and will turn to the internet a lot of times for help, and that's been a challenge for us because, one, we've had to do a complete 180-degree shift on how we're delivering education, but the internet still is like the Wild West, and everyone has a voice. And so you may have somebody that's qualified to help somebody give an answer, and then all of a sudden somebody that's just a hobby gardener that has no good background completely say something different. And if you're doing something like on Facebook or Instagram, everyone has an equal voice. And so those are some challenges we're looking at. But one thing I've done, and this was partially spurred by COVID-19, was that I've moved most of my volunteer education online. And we just are using Zoom. Annual subscriptions around $100. And I've actually increased the number of volunteer candidates by doing this, decreased the amount of time as far as preparation. I'm not setting up and tearing down classrooms. And the goal is, and this will be another year or two, but it increased the number of county residents served, because this volunteer training involves teaching these volunteers who are interested in yard and gardens on how to interact with the public, how to disseminate research-based information. And if I don't have to directly help them, but there's a volunteer qualified to do that, then that frees me up to more deal with commercial entities than trying to have to help homeowners individually. So another thing that this is brand new, and there are a few different podcasts out there that USU Extension and other extension services have, but I've started recently a podcast having to do with yard and garden education for homeowners. And the goal here and I will say that it's a lot harder to collect good information when you're going digital, because you can know how many people listened, but what impacts did you have? And so part of this is going to be basically pinging those listening to find out how much it helped and what should be done differently and other topics that need to be covered. And right now, what I'm doing is looking at our phone calls, looking at the Facebook pages that U-Extension has on the questions, and then that same day or same week, putting out information on the questions that we're seeing, and then promoting the podcast on social media to answer those questions. And so far, in about 7 weeks, we're up to 900 listens, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a start. I'm using analytics and from the hosting company, and I will be doing some other things to try to get a better handle on what that's directly doing for Utah County, because it's a little bit more of the shotgun approach. And if someone up in Weber County or even the Netherlands can listen, but we're targeting with our marketing Utah County right now. So I will say that the 4-H is going the same direction. I'm the one presenting, my background's agriculture, and so you're getting examples from here. Dean Miner, besides having an agricultural background, is also an economist and developed 2 different programs called Virtual Vita and PowerPay. Virtual Vita helps low-income residents do their taxes. And you look at these numbers, and we saved them $7,500 in prep fees and $80,000 in tax returns, or we got them $80,000 in tax returns. And you might say, oh, those are pretty low numbers for the number of residents, but there's the program right now. If you're looking at, I don't know how many it would be, but the number of people that may not have filed because they didn't have the money or the knowledge to do it. And so one thing we didn't take into account were penalties by not filing here. So PowerPay is a free program that's online to help people reduce debt. County residents saved, we had 153 participants that we confirmed, and so far on an annual basis, those 153 people will save annually a cumulative $183,000 in just interest costs on their loans and credit card debt and things of that nature. Okay, Phragmites. Now this is one area the county has directly asked us to work in. Dean Miner and I spent quite a while looking at who's already in this world. And Utah State University and UVU, even BYU, the county itself, are looking at macro control. So places like the Great Salt Lake, Utah Lake, where there's thousands of acres infested. But one area that there hasn't been a whole lot done is if somebody, what about the person that lives in Benjamin that owns 5 acres? And they have a wet spot, a little natural spring or something, or they're irrigating too much. And once you get this Phragmites established, it's very, very difficult to control. And so Dean and I have been working we have found a couple of spots owned by Union Pacific Railroad, and we've been swinging through some red tape to get permission to do research there. That's about done. The county jail has some locations, and then we're going to be primarily looking at herbicides available to homeowners from places like IFA or Steve Regan to look at residential control. And we're not only going to be looking at these herbicides, but we've already been doing research into physical control. What happens if you keep it weed whacked down? What happens if you dig it? And so this was one request that we received last year that we have been pursuing and we are working on. Okay, I'm going to allow our new Heart Initiative faculty member come up and introduce these slides. She's new as of May. Our former person is working out of Salt Lake County now. And so, Gabby, would you like to come up, state your name for the record?
Okay. Hi. Hello, everybody. My name is Gabriela Mirza, and as Ton had said, I just started actually at the end of February. So I'm still kind of new. But there are a couple of things he wanted to give me the opportunity to share with you some of the things that I've already have done since kind of jumping into the position. So I just wanted to explain what the Heart Initiative is. The Heart Initiative itself is a 4-year pilot that focuses on pressing public health issues. This 4-year pilot focuses on the opioid epidemic. The Heart Initiative involves 5 faculty, all around, kind of dispersed around 9 counties around Utah. And these 9 counties are chosen were chosen for this initiative because their rates of opioid-related deaths are higher than the state average or the national average. And Utah County is one of those counties that falls within one of those ranges. So, Ton asked me to provide some accomplishments and things that I've done because I don't have all of those cool, great numbers that like he would have or, the 4-H program has yet, but I will definitely get those as I start doing more programs. But some of the things that I've done, I have an intern that has been working with me since the beginning of May, and she's with me through the end of September. And she and I worked on a community needs assessment specific to Utah County, and it was in relationship to the opioid crisis. We wanted to look at national data, bring it down to the state level of state of Utah, and then how does that impact Utah County? So through data online, through research-based information, and also through interviews with community partners such as the United Way and the Utah County Health Department, we were able to determine some current successes, some improvements and gaps, some improvement needs and gaps. And also I included information about my plan of work. And if that is something that you're interested in learning about, I could totally go beyond this and talk about that. But really it was a great way to learn about the county as I was trying to get to know everybody, get to know the partners, the key players and the stakeholders, and get to know what the opioid epidemic really looks like in the county for youth and adults. I also have a couple of grants I was able to secure or kind of inherited a couple of grants already. One of them is the 4-H Health Rocks grant. My counterpart who used to be in Utah County, she now covers Tooele and Salt Lake counties, Maren Voss. She was able to secure a 2-year grant with the 4-H Health Rocks program. And when I started here in Utah County, I took it over and we're just starting our 2nd year as of August 1. But it's basically a program that focuses on healthy behaviors, healthy relationship building, and through mentorship. So middle school youth are partnered with high school and or college age youth, and they're partnered together, and that the older youth provides a mentorship, relationship and partnership with that middle school youth. And these middle school youth, we're working with Lake Ridge Junior High School, and so that's, like I said, we're starting in our 2nd year. I'm also the principal investigator for a grant that is focusing on adapting and piloting a remote worker certification course that is now online, and it's available nationally, actually. We're adapting it and piloting it in a county jail so that it can be used throughout the state of Utah in prisons and jails. And these are directed to incarcerated individuals, to inmates. And so it provides an opportunity. We're hoping, with the fact that they can go through this, we're hoping it provides another opportunity, an additional and an easier opportunity for them to be able to get a job or to start a business, like a remote business, and hopefully, kind of minimize all of the barriers and things that they have when they get out of jail or when they get out of prison. And it's sometimes hard for them to find a job. And that has a lot of repercussions later, on down. So with them being able to find a job, hopefully, they can become financially successful, independent, and less reliance on social services, but also employing those social services to be able to cover the kinds of needs that they have upon release. I also have a summer intern.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Have you talked with David Levitt on his diversion program?
No, I have not.
You got to talk with him on
Okay.
see if there's any way that you can help out there too.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, and I appreciate any connections you all have that you can give me. Like I said, I just started. I'm getting to know people. But any connections you have, I would be super happy for any of that. So I appreciate it. And I also do, like I said, I have a summer intern that was awarded. So I have that intern who's with me through the end of September. And actually, with the 4-H Health Rocks program, I also oversee a site coordinator that is the one who implements these weekly club activities. That is going to run basically from this month through, I think, like next July or something like that, weekly program. So you can consider 52 weeks. These kids are going to have these kind of experiences with their mentors. I've also done a couple of programs. Now these have been more at a little bit at the county level, but some at the state level. One of them is the Daily Dose of Wellness series. So one of the things that that a couple of my colleagues and I around the state found was that, especially with COVID-19 right now and a lot of people working remotely, they're looking for opportunities to just do something, get out, be active, work their mind, work their brain, get some support emotionally, mentally, physically, psychologically. And so we came up with these Daily Dose of Wellness programs that are just 15-minute chunks of some kind of a physical or mental wellness activity. And so this is actually right now, we just had a pilot phase from April through June, and this was just for extension faculty and staff. Whether it was in Utah County, we had some in Utah County, but it was also available through Zoom. And so we had faculty from all over the state join in on that. And like I said, we had a pilot session, we're evaluating it, and then we're gonna kind of beef it up a little bit, spruce it up, and then bring it back in the fall. And one thing that we're recording these sessions, so we do have some faculty who can take those recorded sessions and use them in substance abuse treatment facilities. We have plans for that. They'll be available online for people to access, for the general public to access. And so this is all just a way to give the community just different ways of being active if they can't go to a gym or they don't feel comfortable going out, but it's something that they could do and at home and with their families. Okay. And then the second project that I've been a lead on is the Heart Bunch video collaboration. So like I said, there's 5 faculty. We also have a 6th faculty member who is an evaluation specialist. So we started doing these videos, and when you're on Zoom, you have these tiles, and it kind of looks like the Brady Bunch thing, that opening. So we're like, hey, let's do some Heart Bunch videos, and we have the music in the background and all that stuff. But what we do is we do these monthly videos. They're about 5 to 10 minutes each video, and we highlight some kind of a health and wellness topic, and that is available to the public as well. That's on our website. It's on YouTube. We're still looking at the data, the analytics behind it, just to see how many people are actually engaged in that. We do know as of June, the June video, we have maybe like 200 views over 2 or 3 videos. So not the greatest, but we need to do a little bit better on the promotion side of that. But we've talked about burnout. We've talked about how to stay connected with your coworkers during COVID-19. That's been a big thing with people working remotely. Stress management, we're covering sleep, like how to get better sleep. And so we're gonna tackle Suicide Prevention Month, which is in September. So these are all things that are pertinent and timely and hopefully useful information to whoever watches these. We also, as far as Utah County specifically, my colleagues and I hosted a program called Stories of Utah's Opioid Crisis. It's the Utah County Community Conversations. We had about, I think, 5 people join this first one. And what it basically is, it touches on really that whole stigma side of the opioid crisis and substance abuse. There's a lot of stigma involved in that. And in our needs assessment that my intern and I conducted, we found out through speaking with community partners that stigma is a big deal in Utah County, especially when it comes to substance use. And having that stigma can prevent someone from getting the help that they need, and so there are other problems that can snowball, with somebody who's not able to get the services that they need or who is afraid to. And stigma also what happens is people also internalize that stigma and feel shame. And again, that shame can keep someone, can prevent them from getting those services that they need. So this came out of a collaboration, and this is kind of the ending of a grant that my colleague has in Davis County. We're covering, but she's covering pretty much all of Utah. And so we have these community conversations to talk about stigma in a roundabout way, but really talk about and have really important conversations and try to educate each other and try to work off of each other's comments and feelings and ideas and suggestions, and help them kind of really question their own beliefs and go beyond that to see if they could, kind of promote somebody to be able to get the help that they need. I've already, done a couple of presentations, and I know this is on a county, regional, and national level. And the reason, these are important just because a lot of these are recorded. They provide information that is available to the community, to the public, and they provide a lot of good education and information about different programs and service needs and things that the community can use. And also, as I'm presenting to county partners and entities, they're getting to know who I am, I'm getting to know who they are. And so building those collaborations is really important, especially in a county as large as Utah County, or even as small as like Salt Lake County. It takes a lot of collaboration to be able to provide as much service as possible without reinventing the wheel and without doing the same thing. So you could see some of those presentations I've done. I've covered a lot of different things. I just did an hour ago, before we came here, I did one on stigma reduction for the opioid epidemic. So I'm kind of riding a little bit off of that right now. If I'm talking too fast, I'm sorry. And then the last thing I've done is just different fact sheets and publications. And these are a little bit different. So fact sheets, you have the top two with the diet, nutrition, and substance use disorder, and then public health's role in supporting law enforcement, which is still under review. Those go through a formal process. It takes a couple of weeks or months sometimes. Whereas publications, the last two that I've done, we have a COVID-19 website that we started right at the beginning when COVID hit, and people were looking for resources online. Then a lot of us provided different publications for them, so it's stuff that they could use at that moment and make those necessary changes and adjustments in their life, their lifestyle and things like that. So these are all available online. They're available to the public. These are all also things, publications that can be shared with stakeholders as well, especially with that public health role in supporting law enforcement. We're hoping to get it out to it's pretty timely. So, and I think that's about it, actually. So I will, I don't know, do you all have any questions for me? Kind of went through that pretty quickly, but any questions, comments, suggestions?
No, thank you. It's
Okay.
helpful.
All right, thank you.
Ton Bettis again. Commissioners, before I go into seeking your input for areas that we could help the county, we have a couple of other fairly new faculty that I will allow to introduce themselves briefly, if that's okay.
Hi, I'm excited to introduce myself just so you can see my face. This is me. And I am Cindy Jenkins, and I've been living in Utah County for a while now, since I finished my undergrad here. And I'm so thrilled to work with the USU Extension and be able to utilize the partnerships that I already have here with Mountain Land Head Start. I worked there for many years, and I've partnered with United Way and Google Fiber and Thanksgiving Point and so many other organizations, and I'm thrilled to just dive in. I've been here, this is day 3 for me, so I'm really thrilled to dive in and do a needs assessment on a formal level, hopefully with United Way, because theirs is a really thorough one that's really good, and then also informal ones. So I may also be approaching you to get an informal needs assessment to get some answers there. And then I just am really excited to be here. I've also worked a little bit as a delegate for the Republican Party, so I know a little bit about your background, so I know a little bit about you, and then that's a little bit about me. So I'm just happy to be here and really thrilled to be doing some good work in the community. Oh, home and community. Yeah. Okay.
May I? Thank you. Hi, my name is Melanie Ogan. I'm the new 4-H coordinator for here in Utah County. One of about 25 hired throughout the state back in October. And I have been working alongside Caitlin Hopewith, our other 4-H educator. We've been working together to begin to revision and rework the 4-H program over the last several months, and then COVID got in the way. And so we're still working on that and hope to continue that progress with our new 4-H year starts in September, and to bring something new to the table.
So you ready for this week?
You want the honest answer?
Ready or not?
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to keep introducing myself, but Ton Bettis. And just by way of information, Andrea Walker-Bravo, who is our campus-based county relations program leader, is here if you have any questions for her. So right now, unless you have anything else,
Wait, wasn't Andrea in Salt Lake?
Yeah, she's both Salt Lake and county-based, excuse me.
Okay, good.
Salt Lake and campus, so yeah. Salt Lake County Director plus campus responsibility for statewide county relations, so. Okay. So I will open up the time to the three commissioners. I'm assuming Commissioner Ivy's still on the phone for any input or any suggestions or even criticisms.
I'll start. Thank you. It's always important for me to look at what USU does, and I think it's underrated in a lot of ways. Our county is agricultural in a lot of respects. It's kind of a half-half split, if you call it that. And so I appreciate the work that you do and what it does, for our county to a large majority with the groups that are involved. And also with the work, Phragmites was one of them that we kind of tasked you with to kind of go after. I'm curious on that one. That devil, I call it the devil weed, because it just
It's far harder to
intertwines
get rid
everywhere.
of than bindweed, which is the stereotypical, I'm never getting rid of this weed, and it's much more tenacious than that one.
Yeah, it is. It just crowds everything else out. And so I'm really curious at that one as you kind of go through that study, because it's one that I'm sure Richard deals with on a regular basis, with the marsh masters and everything else out there, or grazing techniques that are being done. And so I'm just kind of looking to you. That one jumps out because it's so upfront. But what are some areas in the county that you possibly see that are developing as not necessarily problems, but opportunities for us, to go after now, instead of waiting until it become a problem in the future?
Well, one area, I've had several farmers independently call me. When I say farmers, I'm talking orchardists, vegetable growers, worried because of competition from international, other countries. And right now, our tart cherry market is flooded. We've been receiving inexpensive cherry juice from Turkey at about a quarter of the cost that we can produce it. And the cherry growers have been working with President Trump and that administration to see what we could get done, because there's possibilities that this is being dumped intentionally against the law. And so a lot of times our cherry growers may have 3 years of cherries in their freezers that they have to sit on because they can't sell them, because it'd be a money-losing proposition. And so they hold on to them hoping that the market improves so that they can sell them. But right now, we at least have a 3-year supply of tart cherries. Some other problems we've been running into, California has introduced 3 or 4 new peach varieties that ripen very late. And late for California is our prime market. And last year, our markets were flooded with California peaches, and a lot of grocery stores stopped taking local peaches. And even though we had a bumper crop, a lot of those had to be dumped because we couldn't sell them because places, and I don't want to single anybody out, but box stores and grocery stores, it's easier for them to deal with one person from someplace that handles fruit from California than several local growers. So that's been another challenge, that even though we have good crops, all of a sudden, and I know this is cyclical, and so a lot of these growers have called me about diversification, agritourism, and other aspects that they might be able to make money because they are worried, seriously worried about losing their farms because they had a bad year with peaches and they've had to go to diversion in the tart cherries because we have so many of them. And I'm not sure how much if they had to dump this year, but last year 10% of the crop went on the ground because there was no market for it. And because of the national cooperatives and how things are regulated, nationally it was decided that Utah would dump, or divert is a better name for it, 10% of that crop. So those are some of the economic challenges. And you're well aware of the labor issues. 15 years ago, I worked at the largest plant nursery in the state, and we would regularly get 300 to 400 applications from migrant workers. The nursery got 0 last year. The farmers down here are running into the same issues. H2A issues are another problem that they're running into. And so I think that their challenges is always trying to innovate, not doing what Dad did because that is no longer relevant. And so an area extension really needs to help out. And one area that we need to do some work is how these farms can innovate to stay relevant, especially if we're going to be flooded with cherry juice and peaches. What are some other things that they can be doing?
And then also, obnoxious weeds will always kind of
Yes,
seem
and
to be a
so
problem.
if you want particularly weed problems,
Right.
hoary cress is sometimes called white top. It's another one. This is difficult or more difficult to get rid of is bindweed. And it's become a problem in wildland areas. It's become a problem in fallow fields. It's become a problem in homes. That is another one that we can look at. And it's not been official research, but I have been doing research on the best ways to get rid of it, not only just with chemicals, but with other methods. A lot of people choose not to use herbicides and things. And so we try to take an even approach to that. And so those are 2 weeds that I think are challenging. Another one that isn't everywhere that we've been finding in wetland areas and in like moist pasture situations is one called wild parsnip. And yeah, the root is edible, but it wasn't really even acknowledged that it was here, but I've seen it in 6 or 7 places. If you try to pull it, we had a situation to where an evening commercial lawn maintenance company was hired to eradicate weeds, and he and his bride went out to control these weeds, and she was wearing a short sleeve shirt and shorts and some leather gloves, and they pulled weeds all day on a Saturday and then Friday evening. And Sunday morning she woke up and it looked like she had been rolling around in a poison ivy patch. And there's nothing you can do. This wild parsnip will sometimes give you second-degree burns, and it will cause your skin to be discolored for up to a year. It can take about 2 weeks to get over. And I've heard it described to be almost as painful as shingles. And so she laid in bed under a sheet, just laying as still as she could. And this is in a number of places in the county, and it hasn't really hit the radar yet. And so that's another one that I think we need to jump on that maybe could be eradicated before it really goes crazy.
Yeah. So are you involved with, Bateman Farms is, I think they're one of the largest, if not the largest dairy in the state of Utah, but they have that little experimental, I think it's in conjunction with New Skin, in a growing controlled environment. Is the university involved with that at all?
Bateman Farms would be more somebody Dean deals with. Dean, are you aware? No, we are not.
Okay.
But that would be definitely, we do have a good relationship with Bateman Farms, and so that would be definitely.
Do you also have, there are a lot of places across the country are converting these big box stores into indoor lettuce growing factories and so forth. Do we have that here in the county?
We have some startups of doing that, and so far the limited research that USU has done, we have a researcher that deals with growing crops in indoor environments. He's actually been doing a lot of work with NASA on growing crops on the space shuttle, but a lot of his work crosses over to commercial hydroponic operations and things of that nature. And so far, he's felt like the technology is only sustainable because people are willing to pay a high premium for those crops. And when you compare the cost of growing those things, even efficiently in an outdoor environment, that it's cheaper to just grow it outside. However, with that being said, a lot of our land is being taken up, our population growth is incredible. And I think that those sorts of things are becoming more viable. And so USU itself is involved in researching that, looking at the efficiency and looking at optimal growing. So far in the county, we haven't been directly, but the university is.
Okay, because I know there's a lot of, there's a number of restaurant owners that are interested in that, especially on the lettuce side. Just because indoors you can grow so many, you can grow it year round.
Yes,
and
you can. And so
trick
it's
the
just
plant.
more, the challenge with that is the crops like a tomato or, lettuce doesn't require the light, and lettuce is a lot easier to grow, but somebody growing, let's say you have an indoor space, the cost of electricity and heating makes it cheaper to ship it out of Mexico. And so that is becoming more of a thing. And more people are interested in the locally grown food. And so that is, up in Salt Lake County, that's hit pretty big. And we do have specialists on campus working in those areas, and we definitely could pursue that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just say I appreciate you. This has come a long way, and I really appreciate the way you've gone about and presenting this kickoff
Thank you, Commissioner.
presentation. I think that it's really helpful to get
Thank you.
that full overview and scope. And the only thing I would ask you to continue to do is just continue to add some local data
Okay.
to this. I think the USU Extension Program has a long history, and it's wrapped in federal and state law, and so there's a unique relationship there. But there's not a lot of nonprofit organizations or others, even that are doing a ton of good, that the county actually contributes taxpayer dollars to. And so I think that because taxpayer dollars are going to this program, it's just important to continue to have that data. This is a huge step, and so I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Eric. That's
And so
greatly
to
appreciated.
Continue to just show and demonstrate those impacts, I think
Okay.
is critical.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ivy, do you have anything?
You bet. Wonderful presentation. It's, you guys are doing such a great job. I really appreciate the advancements that the university brings in the agricultural sector. I believe that one of America's greatest inventions or ideas was the land-grant university to promote our food production, and I just really appreciate what you guys are doing to help that along here in the county.
Thank you.
So thank you, and great data. This was exactly the kind of report I was hoping for. Well
Thank
done.
you. Well, much appreciated. Do you have anything for Andrea or any questions or anybody else? We have everybody here from all the different program areas just in case, so.
I don't. You answered. I had some questions about the tart cherries, and you had answered them earlier in your presentation, so that I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you. If that, I'll sit down. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone for being here. Okay, we'll turn to our final item, is the Utah County Capital Improvement Program.
Hello, my name is Patrick Warro. I'm the IT Director and a member of the Capital Projects Planning Committee. This is the first of a series of work session items. We anticipate going through different aspects of the capital projects plan as in the coming weeks in preparation for its eventual adoption. The purpose of the committee, let me just say, the committee was formed a while ago. We became active last December, It included Deneen Jackson, the budget chief budget officer, Richard Nielsen, the public works director, and myself. We began meeting in December, talking about this process, what it would take. We were tasked with kind of a monumental task, and it turned out to be even bigger than we suspected. But we wanted to gather information on all the possible capital improvement projects that could be addressed over the next decade, and curate them and get them into a sort of a central document that we could compare one to another and develop
Patrick,
a forward-looking
can
plan.
I just pause you for a
Right.
moment? Because when you said it was formed last year, it actually took a while to come together when you came together in December. It wasn't passed in December. I think it was passed earlier in the year.
It was.
And if my memory serves me correctly, this policy was recommended in conjunction with a number of other policies that we passed. We had an ethics policy, a conflict of interest policy. We had a a reserve policy. What is that one called? We had a debt management policy, and they all came at a recommendation of our financial advisor on the outside, which was recommending them based on best practices and based on what the credit rating agencies want to see in a fiscally responsible county, right? And so I just wanted to put it in that context of, and I think the reason why they recommend this is, yes, we need to make sure we're planning for the future. With a county growing like ours, we need to make sure of that, but also because they recognize that capital improvement projects, if neglected, can become a liability as real as debt liabilities, because we haven't funded them appropriately, and yet they still have to be taken care of. And so without that in place, I think that some credit agencies kind of red flagged in previous due diligence and said, well, we got to make sure you have this in place. That is what makes us sure there's not a lot of major deferred liabilities in Utah County. So I just wanted to provide some of that context.
Thank you for that. It's well spoken, and that is absolutely true. I can say that my personal involvement began in December when we began meeting actively about how to prepare for this summer, which would be our first recommended capital improvement plan that we'll present to you, and then you'll approve, modify or approve. So what did we do between December and now? The first thing we did is we invited every department in the county to meet with us and describe in their own words and sort of an informal verbal discussion about what projects they saw as neglected, that have been neglected or should not be neglected going forward. We had really great meetings. Those were mostly in February and a little bit in March. Later on in the year, we developed a formal application process so departments could formally not only describe but justify and identify other funding sources and timelines and all that kind of thing. And so we created a fillable PDF form that we used to collect all that information. We compiled all that into a central database, and you have seen a spreadsheet that sort of summarizes that and have been organized by sort of funding type. I should mention at this point that this isn't all projects that county could be spending money on, but these are large projects. This plan really sets a minimum of $100,000 to even qualify to be in this plan. Otherwise, this would take a lot longer, of course, to fill out. And I think the regular budget process identifies those smaller projects. This is $100,000 or more. So in our discussions with some county departments, they had presented some of their capital needs that were below that minimum amount. So we haven't included those formally in our plan. Last month, Deneen Jackson stepped down, and Rudy Livingston, our new budget manager in the clerk auditor's office, took her place. And I'm going to turn the time over to Rudy, who's sort of taken ownership of this spreadsheet, so he can describe how that was organized, how that is organized, and you can talk, ask any of us any questions that you might have. Before I do that, do you have any questions about the process that we went through between, that I've described? Okay, thanks.
Well, as Patrick said, my name is Rudy Livingston. I am the budget manager for Utah County. I'm excited to be here. It's my first time to actually be live in front of the commission, and it's good to be here, really. I love it. I want to, the comments that Commissioner Ainge made regarding the importance of this capital improvement plan, it can't be it can't be overstated how big important this really is. In my former cities that I've worked in, we've had capital improvement plans of various types, and what that does for us is it allows us to plan for the future. Sometimes we get so short-sighted, we look at today's budget and we don't look at tomorrow or next year or the year after that. And so what we're working on doing is getting basically a 10-year spending plan where the first 3 years we've identified projects that actually have funding sources to be able to take care of those right now. And then we look at the further out years. Some of those are going to need some different spending or revenue sources to cover those, and we will be able to obtain those, little by little. And if we can't get the revenue that we need for a particular project, then it's going to have to wait its turn until we have things that can be funded. One thing that I will note is that the schedule that we put together thus far does not include roads and streets. And there's two reasons for that. One is because the roads and streets, they actually have a separate identified funding source that is actually specific to roads and streets. But the other thing is with all the projects going on, we have not been able to pull all that information together, but that will be ready for us within the next 2 weeks so that we can include that in the final capital improvement plan. So we have each one,
Which, I mean, if the rest of them are capital or are general fund, I mean, that does make sense. I can certainly see, and I value Commissioner Lee's perspective on that, but I can certainly see how it's relevant. And just like we need to have a long-term plan, we need to have it for that too.
Yep.
But they can't be ranked against any of the other projects.
That's correct, and that's why we separate them. We will hold them in a separate category, and so they won't be ranked against the other projects because these are paid for by gas taxes and things like that. So they have a specific identified source that we can't use for other things, so they're for that. But we will have them on there, but they won't be competing against our other capital needs, except the caveat is that there is only a certain amount of, if you want to say, capacity that the Public Works Department has to take on and accomplish tasks. Even if they're contracted out, they still have to run the projects and that. So that's the one caveat to that.
So Rudy, and we've talked, about this, and the other one that I think is important to note, although it falls underneath the 100,000 in most cases on individual purchases, is the rolling stock. And it's really hard to go through a capital project plan when we have rolling stock that adds up pretty quick without having some sort of basis of knowing what that looks like, because it does hit the bottom line in the end.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point that I was going to bring up, is that's the other piece. It doesn't fit, except in, with the really expensive vehicles, it doesn't fit our capital plan. But it is very important because every sheriff's department car that we have needs to be on that. So what we're doing is I'm actually working with the folks over at Public Works in the motor pool. We're going to be scheduling all that stuff out so that we can include that and figure out a way that we can. Right now, the departments that use those vehicles get assessed a certain lease rate, if you will. We're looking at different options in there. We're going to bring together some potential revisions to the way we've been doing things, but that will be included in the final CIP plan also.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It has to be.
It has to be in there
Yeah.
because you're absolutely right. While each individual item is not that huge, you put 20 police cars out there and there you are, $500,000 right there. So pretty quickly it adds up with
Otherwise,
all
we can't balance the numbers on it, and then we wind up guessing in the end.
Yeah,
to
and
a certain extent.
the other reason for that is that we have to be able to adequately provide the funds that we need in individual years when these particular assets are up for replacement. So we have to have that scheduled out. Our CIP plan is actually going to go out 10 years. The first 5 years, we're scheduling them out by individual year to see what we're anticipating. And then we have another column that's going to be years 6 through 10, things that are further out on the horizon. And our plan with this is this is going to correspond with the multi-year budget plan that we are going to be putting together over the next year or two, so that we will be planning out where we are, so that some years we might have a little bit less expenses and we can say, oh, we're doing great. But we may know that there's something coming up in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, so that we have to be able to properly plan for that, either to have the revenue base that we need for that, or if we choose to have sufficient reserves to cover the replacement or the addition of those assets. So we're trying to be very responsible with this. I think that's the other reason why the bond holders want that, is so that they know that we're being responsible with our funds and that there will be money available to pay off our bonds when we need to pay them off. So we have met individually with each one of the commissioners to go over this schedule. This is a living document that is changing. In fact, I made some changes to it this morning because I got some new information from the Sheriff's Department. So we're going to be bringing those together. Our intent here is not necessarily to get down in the weeds with every single one of these assets, because that would be kind of silly for us to go through this. But I want to go over the methodology and the overall general view of where this plan is going and what we're doing with it. So on the schedule that you have all seen, we have several different categories. And the other thing I want to mention too is when we're looking at fixed assets, one of the things that gets lost sometimes is the ongoing operations. We may have a beautiful car donated to us and we can say, yes, I've got that thing. But as you'll hear me say this probably 1,000 times before we're done here. If you get a puppy, that puppy's beautiful, it's cute, but that puppy's gonna grow. You're gonna have to feed it. You're gonna have to take it to the vet. You're going to have to clean up its messes. You're going to have to do a whole bunch of things and train it. There are expenses that come with these things. So that's one of the other things that we're trying to identify as we're working with the departments to put this list together, is what are the ongoing expenditures that are going to be following this. It amazes people because they tend to forget that piece of it.
I appreciate that, because it always says on the sign, free puppies or free cats.
Yeah.
And it's not true.
Yeah, it definitely is not true. But they're wonderful and they add so much to our lives. But we have to calculate that part into what we're doing. So that's why we need to have that. So on our schedule here, we are identifying a section that is going to be the ongoing budgeted items that aren't necessarily part of the capital plan, but the ongoing costs associated with that. Some of these, in that schedule we gave you, we start off with some software costs that we've already incurred getting the software, but there's annual maintenance fees that are actually quite high. I say quite high. I'm not saying that they're not worth what we're paying for them, but they're a larger dollar amount. So we're identifying those on here, but there's going to be more of a footnote than rather looking at planning these, because these are things we're actually have contracts for, and we will continue working with them. The second area is where we're looking at replacing existing assets or maintenance projects related to things that we already have. So for instance, on that, we have buildings that need windows replaced, or a HVAC system to be replaced, or various different things like that. So we're including those on there, which are the things that we already have, not new stuff. The next section that we have on our schedule is the new projects. So for instance, some departments have asked for additional parking lot, space, and so we may have to construct some land, some parking lots for that. We may have stormwater upgrades, different things that we have to do, which are going to be new projects, not just continuation of what we have. And we've also split these out. There are some that are in special revenue funds that aren't going to impact the general fund, but they need to be identified as well. Because we can't just say, oh, well, that's just for the convention center. Well, there's one of those puppies that we got there that just needs food and kibble and all that kind of stuff all the time. You know, anything that we're responsible for, we need to identify so that we can actually make the appropriate plans so that we have sufficient revenues to cover the expenditures that we will have in the future. We also, the last section we have in here is for the internal service funds, because they have different needs than the general fund does. And ultimately, most of that stuff will get passed through to the general fund and all the departments within the county. I said county, yeah. I've worked for cities for so long that I often catch myself slipping and saying council members or the city. I'm trying to beat that, so county. I love being here at the county, it's great. And then finally, there's one more area that we are including on our schedule, and these are capital projects that are legitimate capital projects, but they have identified a separate funding source. For instance, the CJC facility in the North County. That group there, they have some friends of that are going to be paying for some facilities up there. So it's not coming out of general fund money, but we still need to keep track of it because ultimately it's ours and we have to take care of it. So we're working on this extensively. We're going to be working with the departments and going through and evaluating each one of these requests that they have and coming up with things. Looking at the things that we have on our schedule right now for the replacement of existing projects or existing assets or maintenance projects, we believe that we have sufficient funding available for those for the next 3 years. It will be okay. Once we get down below that, we're going to have to make some decisions on whether we want to do these now or push them out. Another reason that just the thought of why we absolutely have to have this plan is because we may have things scheduled to happen in year 3 or 4, but for some unforeseen circumstance or whatever, the conditions are right that we should do it now because, like after the 08 recession, when it happened, you could get construction for nothing. And so the cost of materials and everything went down significantly. We may have like a road project or we may have some kind of a construction project scheduled in, and all of a sudden we may have some fluctuation in the cost of doing that. And it will make sense if we plan for these things adequately to have the funds available to accelerate something so that we can accelerate it now, either out of necessity or to obtain some kind of a benefit and save money in the long run. So that's why we're putting this together. We're gathering the final submissions. And what our plan is as a committee is that we will come and meet with the commissioners weekly and give you updates on where we are with regards to this. And we'll get down a little bit more down into the details as needed, with the ultimate goal of having the commission approve the capital improvement plan for 2021 around the end of August. I believe it's the last meeting in August is what we're targeting right now. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have or comments.
I've got one. I don't know if it's a question or comment, but we touched upon it when the group was in talking with me, and that is that sometimes when we look at capital projects, we put it on a timeline, which is always an interesting timeline to me because we say this probably needs to be replaced in 10 years. And it can be based off of manufacturer warranty, can be based off of all kinds of different variables can be placed in there. And so for me, when there's a conversation on that, I want to know why we're replacing it. Because I've seen it before when somebody comes and I'll just use these tiles right here. These tiles up on this ceiling were scheduled to be replaced this year. And yet, if I look, this is not true, I'm just making it up.
Right.
But I look at it and I think, why would I spend the money to replace those tiles? Although they're scheduled to be replaced, they look like they're fine. So I want to know what the methodology is when we come to those and that's kind of way into the details, and I get that. And there's people that are a lot better at predicting that and knowing why we're going to do that on a massive scale. But those are the kind of things I'd like to know, just kind of methodology of how we do that and bounce back and forth. Because there are times when you can get the bang for the buck, and there are other times when you look at it and you say, we're not gonna do this right now. We can actually live with what we have, and there's another pressing need over here, and that's why it's a living document.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. I am one that I safeguard county funds as much as I do my own personal funds. And I have no patience for people who spend money just because, oh, it says we can, or because the spend it or lose it attitude. That just doesn't fly with me. That's why I drive a 2004 vehicle, because I get along. It does just fine for me right now, and I'm looking forward to someday I'll be replacing it, but I don't buy a new one just because something happens. The other thing that I forgot to mention with this plan is what we're trying to do also. And many things, like we know right now, one of the big needs in this particular building is a replacement of the HVAC system. Those things have about a 40-year life, and that's about what the life of this one is right now. So
You
we
get
have
40 years, you're doing really good.
Yeah, exactly.
state
But
that.
so the point is that we have to make sure that we put into the cost of doing that work that's really due now. But then we want to start putting money aside for the next replacement, because that's how we beat this whole deferred replacement issue that comes up all the time. People just don't want to look at it. We need to put money in the budget each and every year to cover the future costs. So we kind of even it out, so we don't have $10 million next year or 5 years from now, instead of putting $2 million a year in over the next 5 years to cover that. So we're trying to anticipate our needs with that, and also with our rolling stock as well, and so we can put enough money in there to cover whatever our costs are going to be.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And so procedurally, this is going to come and it's approved.
Yes,
And then is that just updated and approved every year?
that's correct.
Yeah.
Now, it is entirely possible that something new comes up in the middle of the year we had no idea about. Then that would come before the commission at that point. But yes, this is a one-year document, and we will update this every single year, because as I said originally, we are putting the first 3 years are things where we have identified funding sources. Don't have an identified funding source, when this thing comes here, it doesn't get approved. So we'll have to push it out. So that's why each year we will reevaluate everything and see what our needs are and try and capture everything. It's not going to be perfect the first year, I'll guarantee that, but we're making a lot of progress. I just recently joined the committee here, about 4 months ago. I was kind of the fourth wheel, if you will, and I'm officially on the committee now, and I think we're making a lot of progress, and I think it's going to be really good. We're just trying to turn the corner and moving things in the right direction. So we'll have something that it'll be pretty decent, but it's not where we want to get ultimately, because we want to keep fine tuning and making things better.
Thank you, Rudy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that concludes our items on the work session. And if there's nothing else, then we can go ahead and adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.